Welcome back to the Half a Day Show. I'm your host, Jay Half a Day, the flyest man on the internet. And today we are back with another installment of Behind the Brand. Joining us today, we have somebody I've wanted to come on the show for a really long time. I don't think he knows that. He knows it now. We have a pollster, political commentator, content creator, business owner, I guess, right? Yeah, the world's tallest activist. Give it up for Joshua DOSS.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
How you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. You know, I'm blessed and highly
favored. Another day in the neighborhood. So, Josh, we got an exciting episode with a lot of good questions lined up. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the series, it's an interview series where I talk to creatives, entrepreneurs, business owners, anybody that has an interesting story, and I sort of step through their journey and what got them to the point where they could become a brand. And we put a spotlight on you and your journey as we go behind the brand.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be a good episode. It'll feel really conversational, just two homies kicking it. But yeah, the audience will enjoy it. But if you're ready, we can get started, right? Let's do it.
Is this camera on me?
And first question then. Do you consider yourself a brand? What does the Joshua DOSS brand stand for?
It's funny when you said that you ask the questions that get behind the brand and the person that comes on either is a brand or has a brand. It made me think, I'm like, do I have a brand? That was my friend. I was like, do I have a brand? I guess if I do have a brand, I think some people maybe would guess that it's political, but I don't think it's political. I think it's just, I think way too deeply about things. Yeah.
What do you say about that?
I'm not able to stay on like the surface level. My mom used to always say like, don't be so deep you're drowning.
Wow.
I be drowning a lot.
Black mom's got a million.
So you got the sayings, yeah. And sometimes it comes in handy. I think, some people have taken to my thoughts as it pertains to politics or race or something like that. And then sometimes it's difficult because you're trying to do everyday things and, it's like, hey, come on.
Let's dial it back because you're still Josh at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, yeah.
So how do you create some of that distance between, politics? Actually, let's start there. Is it a good or a bad thing for politics to be content? Do you agree with like the sort of framing as politics as a sport or spectacle where you're presenting this information to people as something that they not only engage with, but something that they sort of are entertained by?
Yeah. Wow. Rock off. Yes. Is there up with a tough question? I also want to know your thoughts on this too. I want to know everybody's thoughts on this. I think it is a good and a bad thing. I think the Trump era kind of being mixed with, and I say Trump because he is such a character. Like he's a loud, boisterous character, like many presidents we haven't seen. I don't think we've ever had a president like that. So I think him being such a character at this time period where like so much information became not just like at our fingertips, it was always at our fingertips, whether it was a newspaper or on our desktop computers, but like in our pockets.
Yeah. And it's that accessibility.
Accessible. I think those two things together probably opened up this era where people who didn't even want to pay attention felt like they had to pay attention, right? Because it was right there and he was so loud. And I think there was good and bad in it. I think the good is that at least the people who want to fight for the things that I assume we would both want, right? Like the liberation of Black folks and to help people who have been left out of the political systems. At least those people are getting more involved.
Yeah.
But the bad thing is it becomes a little gamified, a little reality television-y, you know what I'm saying? Is that like your perspective?
Yeah, 100%. It's sport. And it's like sometimes for me, because I do like political commentary as well, it's sort of challenging navigating sort of like, because I'm like, this is my career. Like I worked in government like since I was 18, 19 years old. So I'm like, now that it's sort of like, okay, now I have to talk about this for like not only just civic engagement, but to inform people, but people are also entertained by the shit. Like I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm talking about like all the crazy shit that goes on in Congress. And it's like, well, I'm talking about this shit like TMZ.
Yeah.
And I sort of want to put a buffer between that because it's here. This is real life. It shouldn't feel like, it shouldn't feel like, it shouldn't feel like scandal.
Yeah.
But real life feels very much like that because of this sort of weird time that we're in right now.
I think it also like, it kind of speaks to like how we like to consume information.
Yeah.
Right? Like the people who need it delivered to them like TMZ or like Scandal probably weren't participating a lot in politics, right? They weren't the people who had like subscriptions to the New York Times.
Yeah.
There were people who were just kind of like, they like TMZ and Scandal, right?
And ain't
and ain't nothing wrong with that. But like, I think we needed to get more people involved.
Yeah.
And now people like you and I are trying to find new communications pathways. I will say too, though, part of me is kind of glad that we're here because I think that prior to this, it was a little stale. And sometimes like language is used as a repellent. Like sometimes people wrap legislation up in very complicated language to make people not want to
engage with it.
And while they do crazy shit in your life,
it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's sort of like legal language when you're hearing a Supreme Court decision and stuff like that, and they're using the most gaudy language all the time, and they're like, nah, this is illegal because XYZ.
Exactly.
That's simple.
Yeah.
And politics really is that simple, but sort of in this age of information and digital media where we're at, you got to play the game in order to reach your audience.
Yeah.
It's important. I am a very much a by any means necessary type of person when it comes to this, but there is a line that I think you have to walk in this space. How do you sort of navigate sort of this rage economy and this, like maybe the clickbait pitfalls that you might run into?
Oof. It is so easy to get attention when you're disrupting people's nervous systems, right? Like I could take these really abhorrent things that are happening in the world and only use the most salacious of them to get somebody really unnerved, and then I get more views and then I get more money, right? So there's like a negative incentive to rage bait. But I'll say this, admit, I'm not like the social media guru. If anybody, asked me or wanted to know my thoughts on it, I think if you're good enough, you can have hooks and you can have, I don't like the term clickbait, but you can have, things that attract people to your content that don't necessarily disrupt their nervous systems.
It doesn't.
It just intrigues them.
And interests them.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I really like about your platform, and I think we'll get to that at a later point. But you had a clip that was pretty viral last week where you were talking to Stephen A. Smith, and sort of the core of that was talking about being a trusted source of information or a good source of information. You're a good source of information, but how did you come into that? Have you always been that? Have you is it something that you have to work on? I think you talked with Stephen A. It starts with him. People that have an audience, you have a responsibility to sort of reinforce good information. So when we're talking about sort of balancing, not disrupting people's nervous system, but also being a good source of information, how do you navigate that? When did you come into that skill? Because I think you're a powerful communicator.
I appreciate that. I think, I could come on here and be like, I've always had it figured out. I think I'm figuring it out live just like everybody else. This is a weird vertical world we're in where like you get penalized for things you didn't think you get penalized. You get praised for things you didn't try to do. And, I work as a researcher. So the truth has always been my North Star. Something I say all the time is like, I don't want to let my politics determine what's true. I want my truth to determine my politics, right? So I think like the discipline that I have as a scientific researcher always pushes me towards getting the real answers. But just because you got the answers doesn't mean that you could communicate them in a way that people agree with, or willing to listen to. And so I guess that's a long way of me saying like, I'm still figuring that out.
Hell no, I'm not. I mean, today, the answer you get today is not the answer you would have got 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought, fresh into college, I'd have been like the best thing since sliced bread. I got all the answers. Not anymore. No, it's like there's a lot more nuance in reality than a lot of people think. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you have to, I think it is something you got to work on. It's a muscle. Your mind is a muscle at the end of the day. You have to sort of gradually increase that skill of being a trusted source of information.
You said something there, I think that's like really deep. The more like 8 years ago, you would have said that you had the answers. Now you're 8 years better. You're objectively 8 years better, but you feel maybe a little less confident. And I think that goes to show, the more you know, the more you find out how much there is to know.
There is.
And you actually get like, there's a quote, there's an old quote about this where it said like, the problem with the world is that fools are so sure and wiser people are not. Because once you really get into it, you're like, damn, there's more here. There's more nuance here. But when you don't have all the information, you could be like, oh, that person did it. And you move on, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
a lot more gray, a lot more color than black and white.
For sure.
Like, sure. And what I've learned, because it's the arrogance of youth. I feel like, when you were 19, early 20 something, you figure like your way is the only way.
Yeah.
Then you get to your late 20s, early 30s, and it's like, okay, life done mellowed you out. You done lived a little bit, took a little trip around the block. You know how it actually goes. So I'm like, that's where I'm sort of navigating. And I don't have the answers for sure, but I know what I do know, and I know that well. But I did want to focus more on your story because I think it is important to highlight, that's what makes somebody's brand important. And that's what makes something special is the things that you stand for. It's the story behind it, how you came into these things. So I want to focus a little bit on your sort of aha moment. And, I asked this question to all my guests. Was there a moment in time where things just started to align for you when it come to like your goals or your dreams? Like, did you always envision being a pollster? Like, did you always envision having this large platform where you're talking about politics? When did it click? When did when the doors started aligning for
you? Yeah, that's a good question. I did, I played basketball in college, and I was very focused on just, in high school, I was like, I want to get the Division I scholarship. I got the D1 scholarship. And then of course, like all D1 players, I wanted to play in the league. And I didn't have a good senior year, followed by a junior where I sat out all year. When I was sitting out, I remember thinking like, if this doesn't work out, I want to land on my feet. And I was already majoring in political science, but that was the year, I think, because I literally couldn't practice and couldn't play, I was like, let me take this a little more serious. And I think, that was a small aha, because I was like, okay, I think I found the thing that I would do if it wasn't basketball. But then the next like 6 years was just like trying to find my place in this world of politics. I started off on campaigns, and then I worked in the White House, and I did communications, and I worked on the Hill, and I did all these things. And, none of them were really landing. I was a pollster at one point at a firm that made me feel like I was really bad at it.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah, like they were very intense, and and I was new, and they were like, when I would mess up, the feeling wasn't like, okay, you're new, you messed up. It was like, are you done? Like I was on my own. I was like, oh,
well, I actually know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I left the polling world actually, and I worked in the funding world for a couple of years. And then I found the firm that I work at now, Hit Strategies, the largest Black-owned political research firm in the country. Shout out Hit Strategies. And that was, I think, a little bit of my aha moment where I was like, it wasn't so much that I was a bad pollster. It was that I think I was looking at data in a way that Black people look at data.
Yeah.
And I think I needed some really strong Black data scientists around me to say, no. You saw that exactly how, yep, that's what that says.
You preach it.
And it emboldened me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because like them data narratives, like it's so much behind it. You could tell a story 3 different ways with the same set of information. And I really like that point where you're talking about being in a community of Black data scientists, Black pollsters, a Black Black-owned strategy firms.
Sure.
Like, these are things that we're not really common to seeing.
Yeah.
What does that feel like? What does that mean to you? How important is that?
It meant everything, man. I think like it was the launch of my career. The social media stuff I went off and did on my own, and I think that was more of me developing myself as a communicator. But as far as establishing myself as a pollster, it meant everything. I think like there's a confidence that we get when people like us, can either celebrate us or correct us, right? And I think that, especially in the world of politics, so you have all these like issues in America that like are racialized even when we don't think they are, right? Like food stamps is a racialized issue, like healthcare in America is a racialized issue. Here's a good example. The federal government was giving out home loans, business loans, and access to higher education during a time period in the 1900s, I believe like 1940s. To everybody but Black people.
Yeah, this is like around the GI Bill era.
GI Bill. To everybody but Black people. They did promise Black people if they went to war and came back, they get access to GI Bill, and they didn't give it to them.
No.
And this was something that everybody in America, like now that sounds like, oh, socialism, Democrats were like, everybody was cool with it. Folks on the left and right were cool with it.
It's cool when they do it.
They was cool with it. And then the minute Black people wanted access to it, they took the federal funding away from all of the state schools. They tanked their own schools to keep Black people out of them.
Boy, that racism
will have you fucking your own communities over, right? And I think that like things like that, issues like that, if you're looking at this very racialized world where somebody's coming to you and they want to run on a policy and you're seeing how race is playing into something they're telling you that seems non-racial, you're not crazy.
No.
You're just looking at the data in a different way. And I think I needed somebody.
And I think that context is definitely important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Hit Strategies, man. I'll always love that place.
Yeah, it's really interesting though. But I'm like, if we could sort of, so I think that does draw a nice line to sort of that environment. Being in an environment where you're welcome and feel empowered to do the work that you know you can do.
Sure.
That's part of it. But if we go back to even more like younger you, like South Side of Chicago, correct?
West Side.
West Side. Okay, 290, right?
290. Yeah.
290. Okay, I'm learning. Big 290. That's a bad one. That's a sin.
Yeah, you realize
Cut that one out. West Side. West Side of Chicago. You consider yourself a product of your environment?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. I love it. For sure. Tell me more about
I'm a
that.
product of, I absolutely am a product of my environment. I think my environment produces a lot of things, many of which get promoted in with bad faith, right? The West Side of Chicago, and it's, I grew up in a rougher neighborhood in Chicago. Like Austin has its its struggles, but Austin is also producing people like Mayor Brandon,
Right.
Brandon Johnson. Actually, you know what? I found out just recently he moved to Austin. He wasn't born in Austin, so I'm gonna take him out of there. But yeah, I mean, Austin is creating people who are changing the way that people see America, see the world, see Chicago. And so I absolutely consider myself a product of that environment. The people that I met there, like, there's a grind. I feel like a lot of people probably feel like this about their hoods, but like, there's a grind in Austin. It's like people count us out almost. Even on the West Side, like even when you go to Garfield Park, you're like, oh, these niggas from Austin. Like, on the West Side, niggas count you out.
Hey, look, you giving me lore about Chicago, and I'm still learning shit. So
You gotta get out there. But like, to answer your question, like, for sure, I consider myself a product of my environment.
So I mean, like, if we could land there for a little bit, where we're talking about sort of like the negative stereotypes of like being a product of your environment. I don't think we ever really talk about sort of the positive impact of like, how that adversity can shape a different perspective that's needed in the world. Saying like, I'm a real big proponent of black spaces and different spaces. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the government could do better if they had more niggas from the hood with a little bit of access. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, at the end of the day, these working people out in these areas where they're sort of not invested in, they're sort of red taped and redlined away from opportunity. They don't have the access to the best quality of education, but they're still making a way for it. We could still get a Joshua Doss from these same places. What does that say about that place? How could that change the shape and sort of the form of how politics and government works in this country?
Yeah,
more leaders that came from that.
The economic inefficiencies of racism are stark. The fastest growing businesses in America, and it's been this way for the last 5-6 years, is black women-owned businesses. Fastest growing business in America. You know who else is dealing with the most issues with discriminatory loans practices? Black women. Black women aren't getting loans and are still creating and sustaining business better and faster than their racial counterparts. Could you imagine the economic accelerant that we could experience if we just invested in, and we always talk about like DEI. This is the exact reason that DEI exists, is because y'all won't level the playing field.
Sure won't.
If we just were going with the businesses that are moving the fastest, growing the fastest, we'd be giving all type of money to black.
I think they just ignore certain letters in it. That equity part is probably the most critical in that.
For sure.
When you include people, when you diversify people, you're naturally creating an equity when the system isn't really designed to give that.
Yeah.
It's designed for a certain group of players. So then when you decide to intentionally include other people, you're not really like, it's not a priority or it's not a discrimination.
Yeah.
You're just giving access.
It is a level.
Thing.
And listen, white people, if you got some white people, I got two. You got two. White people don't want to even playing field with us. Let's call it what it is. They're terrified of even playing field, because I think if you really believe that somebody is deficient, cognitively deficient, you believe that black people are not as smart as you, are not as capable as you, then why would you take resources away from them?
Play ball.
That's why I always say about basketball. This is why black people dominate basketball, football, all the sports. People say, oh, just because y'all are more athletic. It's like, no, because you guys you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. You know what I'm saying? A three-pointer, always a three-pointer. A free throw, always 1 point. And once you can't change those rules, look at that, 80-some%.
You don't want to play no lag. You take your ball home.
That's facts.
Oh man, this gonna be a black ass episode. But I mean, we listen to this stuff. I do have to ask generally though, like where you're at. You're just coming off of speaking at Harvard at the policy school.
Yeah.
You just recently this past year you had a NAACP Image Award nomination, correct?
Yeah.
All of this recognition, do you feel like you made it, man?
No, I don't.
Do you want what does making it in this space even look like? You was just on Stephen A. You talk
Was on
you know what I'm saying? Like, how does it feel to talk with some of these giants, in our culture? Don Lemon, Stephen A. Like, Mayor of Chicago. Hey, come on.
Yeah, when you say it like that, I'm like, wow, I've been working too much. I need to take a break.
The lights are bright. Enjoy the light.
It's cool, man. I feel blessed to do this work. I think, and I ask this to all black men. I'm curious to see it. Like, is this your experience too? Like, I feel like sometimes we think we can like succeed our way out of childhood trauma. We can like achieve our way into like being worthy of love from our, the people around us. And I think I got that a little.
Man, it's a hard one to confront.
Yeah.
Sure, lots of therapy, but I tell you this: you treat your inner child right, and I think it manifests in other areas. So, like,
do you actually do therapy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I need to get back into it, but yeah.
What made you start?
Oh shoot! I mean, trauma. Honestly, it just got to a point where you can't sort of navigate it. You can't sort of intellectualize it enough. You actually need to sit down and vent to somebody that went to school for this shit and can help you process that. So that was critical for me.
Was it like 2020? I feel like that's when a lot of.
Oh yeah, pandemic was terrible for me, boy. Cause like I'm an outsider. I'm a social person. I'm inside losing my mind. I don't got nobody to talk to. I can't see my family. I'm down in DC. My folks up in Jersey. I'm like, I don't got nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
In a box.
Yeah.
I'm saying the only time I got outside was going to work. I'm like,
yeah.
So I was like, okay, we need to go and confront this.
I wasn't even like, I didn't really believe in it that much. I wasn't one of those people who was like, oh, you don't got no problem. Just like, but I was like, would me as a black man talking to because I was always imagining some generic therapist. I'm like, would that actually help me? But then it did.
It sure did. I made sure I had a black woman therapist. Not to say we had to trauma dump it, but like for me, the easiest person to talk to is my mom. You know what I'm saying? So I had to find an older black lady that I would respect. Cause I'm like, if I was talking to, like at that time, this is younger me, I'm like, if I was talking to somebody my age, a black man my age, I ain't gonna give him the whole honest truth. And actually, when I was looking for a therapist recently, I found a black man who's a little older and it just felt hella dismissive. I'm like, it didn't feel really like a welcoming space for me to talk about that shit.
That's interesting. You said you want to talk to him. I did not want to talk. I did not want I didn't want a woman. I wanted a black person, but I didn't want a woman. But I think it was because some of my like trauma was about women, or it was, or some, not trauma, but like some of the things I wanted to talk to were about the women in my life.
And that's hard to navigate.
And then I'm like, I didn't want to be up in there and be like, yeah, I didn't do that. Cause I'm like, I don't want her to think of me crazy, but I feel like an old black man, I could be like, you know.
Yeah, I needed somebody that was going to tell me when I was fucked. Cause my part of that was like, all the shit was like, but I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I had to have somebody sit me down and tell me, no, you're irrationally thinking. Yeah. You're doing these things because of, X, Y, and Z. So I had to have somebody sit me right. And I don't think at the time, now I could probably, but it's like, it had to be somebody I felt safe to speak with. You know what I'm saying? I think I'm at a point now where I'm like, nigga, I could talk about therapy now. Like, then I would never tell anybody I was even in therapy because it felt like, damn, nigga, you crazy.
Did you have your mom and like, do you have both parents growing up, like your mom and your dad?
Yeah. Now, he did end up like divorcing, but my dad's always been in my life. But he didn't live in our house probably from like age of 13 on. But my whole childhood, he's there.
The reason why I ask is like, I wonder if cause like my dad is he's very stoic. Like he don't got a lot of feelings. He's not like a big, like, I love you guy, but he was there. He was always there. And I feel like, I wonder if like I wanted to talk to a man to kind of like fill maybe some of the things that I didn't get from my dad, maybe. So that's why I asked if you had both of your parents.
Or maybe that's also the other side of it. Cause I couldn't talk to my dad about this type of stuff. Like, I don't think that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I ain't even bother. I'm like, ain't nobody want to hear this shit. Or a woman can understand. But maybe I gotta go back to therapy.
Yeah.
You feel me? But I'm like, it's so much shit that I think it ultimately adds up to sort of the self-work that you have to constantly, nurture and protect. Like this whole show is literally just a product of me trying to cater and heal like childhood trauma. Like I like to talk, but I was real reserved and sheltered as a kid and really feel comfortable talking to people. This was me breaking out of my shell. So
that's beautiful. I love when people turn the things that, not even just turning your trauma into art, but like turning the thing that you like are using to heal yourself into art. That's
so I'm like,
fire.
for the longest, I felt like nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. So I'm like, now I'm gonna force y'all. I like that, but I'm like, y'all got a choice. I set this camera up, got these expensive ass mic, y'all gonna hear it.
That's fire.
You feel me?
Fire.
So I'm like, you come into these things, and I think they all contribute to this sort of aha-ish moment, I guess, and like sort of this sense of making sure we ain't losing our damn. It's gonna get hot in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel pretty.
Sorry, I didn't knock you all off the
Question zip. I mean, this is good stuff though. I think it all contributes. So, but where was I going with this? Let me see. Yeah, like we were talking about recognition and that sense of making it. Yeah, do the accolades, do they matter, or are they just proof of effort? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, they matter. They matter. I think, I think it's
you want to be recognized for stuff.
sure. For sure. It's the noble thing to see him like, oh, I don't care. But like, I care. I'm a human being. I like being celebrated. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at taking compliments. I'm from Chicago and I'm Black, so I like my compliments in the form of insults.
Well, let's pivot a little bit to some of the work. You're like the first Black pollster I've ever made. And like going back to that point I was talking about earlier, Black faces in different spaces. I'm a Black geographer. What the hell does it mean to be a pollster? How did you even come into doing that?
Yeah.
Could you explain some of the misconceptions people might have about the work? What does it actually look like? I feel like, when I joke about it, like niggas is like, America says that da-da-da-da-da. 1 in 10 people believe it. I'm like, niggas ain't never called me when it said me.
Oh, all good questions. Yeah. So a pollster, anytime you hear a percentage like you just said, America says 10% of people believe this or 13% of people do that, that is usually coming from polling research. How you, the viewers, probably know polling most intimately actually is during an election when people are predicting who's going to win. So somebody says so-and-so is up in the polls, or, this person's winning by 10%. Those are just surveys. And in those surveys, you get representative samples that look and sound a lot like the universe that you're looking at, whether it's an American electorate sample or Illinois. And you do something called weighting. You can upweight and downweight it to make sure that it's, representative. And then we just ask down questions, and from that, you can kind of predict, what percentage of that universe does a certain thing. Now, you have some misconceptions. I think a lot of the misconceptions actually is that the polling around these elections were wrong. People will say, oh, the polls were wrong about so-and-so. The polls were not wrong. Polls have what are called margins of error. Which means it could be plus or minus 3.5 percentage points. And when you look at any individual poll in any individual state, usually the results are somewhere within the margin of error. Now, what ends up happening is pollsters will then go and predict based off of those numbers. Say, I predict Michigan will go towards this candidate. And that is what was wrong. Also, if you make a broad statement about the election, you're not really dealing then with polling. You're actually dealing with the electoral college system,
which is different.
That's not, those aren't statistics in that. And so sometimes people say like, oh, weren't the polls wrong about this and that? And it's like, they're usually actually very accurate,
That's a good point though. So would you say we need, well, I think you would agree with this statement. We need more Black pollsters, because I think most of your work, I think, actually focuses on the Black voting bloc. Do we need more people that sort of understand that nuance and that context? Or is it possible for an outside observer from a different demographic to see this voting bloc and interact with that from a data perspective?
It is possible. The reason we need more Black pollsters, I think, is because, frankly, a lot of pollsters aren't, and a lot of polling firms and universities that do polling just aren't really interested in oversampling Black voters or Black people. And the reason why that's important is not so that we can better predict elections. The reason that that's important is because oftentimes in politics, we are divvying out resources based on which percentage thinks that they need it or says that they need it or will vote you down if they don't get it, right? So say you have you have a senator in a state, and that state, 30% of the people in that state are Black. And let's say that if we ran a poll and asked those Black people in that state, if this person could pass something that could, give you more healthcare or give you more, to this area, would you vote against them if they didn't do that? if they had an opportunity to do it and they didn't do it. And if all the black people are like, actually, yeah, we would. If that doesn't get represented in the polling, you might have that politician be like, the black people, they don't really care.
So it's sort of like, I won't even say it's sort of misleading, but it's an underrepresentation. I think
Underrepresentation for sure.
Do you think it's intentional? Because it's going to be a whole nother topic, but we're not going to go on that tangent. Like, it dips into some of my research where I'm talking about sort of how we have this thing, you might be familiar with modifiable area unit problem, was the data aggregation things, where certain small things and when they're making maps, you misrepresent the demographics of that area.
Like Africa.
Yeah.
But Africa's much bigger than what it shows.
That's a spatial manipulation thing.
Oh, okay.
Like when you're looking at the data specifically, so like when they're taking, say, like the demographics of Ward 6 in DC, and then they want to change the shape of Ward 6 in DC without really consulting sort of the information of the people that live there, you get a whole different representation of those people. We're not going to nerd out on that, but I say it's intentional. Yes, something that we see in black spaces around the country. Yeah. Do you think that when it comes to the sampling for polls, do you think it's done intentionally, or did they just not care enough to reflect that nuance?
I think it's probably weaponized ignorance. Like I think that because black voters are not the only voters that get underrepresented in these polls. I think that there are definitely some people who know that if we had oversamples of black voters, we would see more about what black people want out of politics in the world.
Yeah.
But I also think I think about like the New York Times Siena poll and like Harvard Kennedy poll. I think it's just like it's an oversight. They think that the black and this is what I was speaking about at Harvard. They think that the black electorate is just this very monolithic, homogenous, ideologically homogenous thing. And so they're like, oh, we got it.
They don't understand how different niggas are.
Niggas are different, bro. That's the lesson to any niggas is different, bro.
There is a reason why you can get figures like a Candace Owens. For sure. And they think.
For sure.
Like, it's no accident.
And it's not just niggas be different geographically. I know you're a geographer. Obviously, people from the South see the world differently than people from the Northeast. We know that. Man, there's imagine a map of ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck where you live. Just a map. There's a marketplace of ideas, and niggas be different in those ideas, even in the same place. You have like these ideological segments of Gen Z voters. Gen Z black people all grew up with the internet. So no matter if they're like in New Jersey or Chicago, there's things that they all agree on.
We gotta have another conversation.
You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta disaggregate that data.
That would be a cool project actually to take on. I just took a really cool, like in my last semester, I took a network analysis class. That would have been something to look at, honestly. Why didn't I think about it? I'm still in. But I mean, for the sake of time, it wouldn't be a conversation about Joshua Doss if we didn't talk about trending topics in politics. We have to talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
But I'm gonna frame it differently. We're not just gonna go clickbait for the clips, not for Twitch. But we're gonna frame it this way. What would you say is one of the most consequential things that would be difficult to recover in a post-Trump, post-Mondo world? Like, is it possible for us to reach? What does that look like of his Mondo post-Trump world?
I think the most difficult thing to recover from is probably something we don't talk about very, very often. And I know it's going to sound biased when I say this because I'm a data scientist, but I promise you, this is not a biased thing. It is the erasing of federal data, because when you don't have the data, you then can tell the world whatever you want. Donald Trump has been waiting on the world to catch up to his narratives for a long time. What are his narratives? That immigrants commit more crime than natural born citizens, that black people are disproportionately dangerous, that, all these things. And the thing that we've had at the very least to fight back was the data.
The data, it was there.
It was there. We saw that natural born citizens were 4 times more likely to commit a crime than illegal immigrants. But then when you have a person who then runs the federal government and all of these bodies who their job is to collect crime data, when they start erasing things, they can then tell you whatever they want.
I mean, we've seen it like firsthand with the NOAA data, like whether when it comes to sort of how they're reporting, sort of like whether that is even like with FEMA, like when you're looking at the investment that they have at the state level, they're not even capturing the information on money spent for that type of stuff. Yeah. Like those did damage in a little bit of year. And I don't know if we won't be able to prove it. It's also in line with the data. It's institutional knowledge. They laid off so many people.
Where's the great point?
That have been there for generations.
It's a great point.
We supposed to be able to train the next generation from people to like make sure the lights don't go off in the middle of a hurricane. Like a super El Nino event this coming fall.
Yeah.
I'm scared for it. We might, I'm not even going to jinx it, but it's like, it's just so much shit that, you know, these people have came in and they're just disrupted it without any sort of, it feels kind of not even reckless, but like they don't care what the aftermath looks like so that they can shape it into something else.
It's easier to, you know, it's a lot easier to destroy things than it is to build them. And I think that like we elected a super team of arsonists, and they are burning things down. And, you know, like, this is not me trying to give Trump any credence, but I think one of the reasons why people were even so willing to elect somebody like Donald Trump is because the systems that existed before the Trump era weren't working for people. And it left a lot of room for somebody to say, well, I'm cool with somebody coming and burning it down. Burning it down is worse in a lot of ways. In some ways some things need to be burned down, but the way he's doing it, taking away the Civil Rights Department and the Department of Education is bad, right? Like, but, you know, we have to look at ourselves, and I don't mean us, but like as America, of like a lot of these capitalistic systems, unfettered, unchecked capitalism, push people to being enticed by an arsonist.
Yeah. And it's like, that's one of the things I think I've learned from being, like, I was very much like when I was a younger 19, 20 something, I was very much, the system ain't doing nothing for us. We need to get rid of everything. I think life has mellowed me out to the point where I'm like, I understand the need for those guardrails.
Yeah.
I do a lot more good than bad sometimes. And I think that this administration was a wake-up call for America, I think. A needed one. Like, you know, you break enough shit, it gets worse. Who comes back to pick up the pieces?
Yeah.
We don't have to pick up the pieces next time.
Yeah.
You do what's right and you preserve it. I think there's more space to grow and build something that actually works for everybody inside of a flawed system than a completely destroyed one, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Black people are the first people to get hurt when it's completely destroyed.
We talked a lot of politics. Y'all didn't get the behind the scenes yesterday. Me and this nigga just talking about Black people cereals. But I mean, it's been a great conversation. Hopefully we can, you know, keep this rapport. This is somebody, this is a cool dude. If y'all don't know who he is, y'all should know now. Y'all follow him on all platforms, but we got one question left for the day. And I had to ask everybody, I think it's the most important one. What is your biggest dream and how do you accomplish it?
My biggest dream. My biggest dream is, at least right now, and I think maybe I'll have a bigger one right now, or down the line. I've actually been writing a fiction novel.
Really?
For the last couple of years.
Oh, we gotta get into that.
Yeah.
You're a nerd.
I am a nerd.
What kind of fiction? Sci-fi? What? Fantasy?
I think it would go under the category of like, it's like philosophical fiction. So like kind of like Life of Pi. You know, like characters that aren't real, situations that aren't real, but that would draw you to think about life, you know, like The Matrix or Truman Show or something like that. And it's I think my biggest dream at this moment would be for me to finish that novel and for it to then be turned into a movie.
Yeah.
How do I get there? I don't know.
Write it. So you've been writing.
I've been writing, and I get these breaks sometimes right after elections. I'll get like a 2-week break. Last time I went to Thailand for 2 weeks, turned my phone off, knocked out like, you know, a couple like maybe 60, 70 pages. But then when life gets going again, I have to put it.
I mean, that's really dope. Shoot. I mean, it's on my list too. I love writing.
Yeah.
Writing and reading.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Both, but mainly fiction for sure. Yeah, like I'm a big sci-fi. I have this guy, you gotta look into Blake Crouch. He has like a few shows on Apple TV, Dark Matter, and there was this other one.
I think I've heard of that one.
It's really good. It's some of the best science fiction. I like it when it's like really close to like the cutting edge, like technology. Those were like alternate realities and stuff like that, but it's also really philosophical, where he's talking about, it's a love story at the end of the day.
All stories are the same, right?
All stories are love story, but like, I love science fiction. In anime?
I'm getting into anime.
Gotta learn. Look.
I like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then I know that some people don't consider that to be anime, but for a non-anime person, that was kind of anime-ish. But then my homie BJ was like, well, he's like, if you like Avatar, you would like Attack on Titan.
Yes.
And I started it, and I was like, it's decent.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw you had the little anime thing back there.
You even see it. If you ever get around to it, that's the best one.
Which one is that one?
That's One Piece, but that's a beast.
Oh, I hear about that one all the time.
Well, I grew up with One Piece, and it's still going.
Well, isn't Dragon Ball Z technically anime?
Still it. No, Dragon Ball is it. One of the first.
And like, we all like Dragon Ball Z when we was kids.
Niggas ain't know it was anime. It's Cartoon Network. Shit, yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? But it's mad shit. This wasn't the episode. We go. It's all good though. But I mean, it's shit like that, y'all. I think it's really critical that you understand not only what you get in forms of like content from people, but who they are behind the scenes. Like, would y'all know this nigga like Ray Fisher? You know what I'm saying? Tap into the people, investigate sort of where they stand on certain things beyond the brand, behind the brand. That's what this is all about. And I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Appreciate you having me.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Anytime. As always, this has been an episode of the Half a Day Show. Education, entertainment, and everything in between. I'll see y'all when I see y'all. Peace.